that loaded? Let me try it.
Having been a fan of Fallout for quite some time now, and with Season 2 of the TV show set in the Mojave Wastelands of New Vegas, I thought this was the perfect time to try New Vegas for the first time. My only real experience with the franchise has been Fallout 4, Fallout 76, and sadly to say, Fallout Shelter. New Vegas is said by many to be the pinnacle of the Fallout saga, and typically is most people's favourites, so I decided to document my entire experience with Fallout New Vegas from beginning to end. And it was time to set foot in the world of the Mojave Wasteland. My first glimpse of the game is a cutscene showing a brief backstory of the main protagonist, me, cornered by Benny, aka Chenandler Bong. After he steals the package that I was meant to deliver, he coldly says that it's business, and then shoots me in the head, presumably killing me. But, you know, presumably. Then the player character wakes up, and I immediately went to making the same looking character that I always do for every single RPG. Perfect. Now, after choosing my stats, I put quite a few into speech, and collecting some DLC items, it was time to venture out into the wasteland. At this point, I was just trying to grasp the control system, but I eventually made my way to the glowing sign of the Prospector Saloon, where I ran into Pete, the dynamite-loving nutcase. I also met Sunny, who gave me a brief tutorial on shooting, which felt super off. I felt like I was missing every shot. And after putting that tutorial into practice by killing a few geckos, I was tasked with collecting some Xander root and some rock flour, and let me tell you, I spent absolutely ages looking for these two items. I knew the rough area of where I was going, but it took me like 20 minutes to find both of them. It was too much. But after collecting, Sunny made some healing powder and also gave me the recipe to craft it later on. With that out of the way, I returned to the saloon, and Trudy, the barmaid slash merchant, was being harassed by a member of the Powder Gangers who was looking for Ringo, who's gone missing. And I was thinking, like, who's this Ringo dude? But I looked at the top of Goodsprings and I saw this decrepit looking gas station, and I found Ringo inside. Initially, he tasked me with rounding up a group of NPCs to fight off the Powder Gangers, but you know, of course, I had to play some Caravan because, you know, I love me some card games and some RPGs. Now, I did lose, of course, because, you know, I skipped the tutorial and just sarcastically thought that I would be able to pull this off, but it was totally rigged, I'm sure. And after rounding up Sunny and Trudy and attempting to bring in Pete, but I didn't have the right stats, so unfortunately I couldn't, a first deadly battle ensued. Even though I barely had any weapons, and to be honest had barely used any weapons at this point, the Powder Gangers were eventually thwarted, and I gained some new gear and some new items. And this is where Ringo told me that he was leaving Goodsprings to go elsewhere, and I thought that this is where my time in Goodsprings should end as well. But what I didn't realise is that I was already an enemy of the Powder Gangers, and future me would soon regret that. Eventually, I made my way out of Goodsprings and landed in Primm, an old town full of Powder Gangers ready to take me down. And after maybe like 6 or 7 deaths and a gun full of bullets, I eventually took them out. And after speaking with some NPCs, I was guided to try and find the deputy sheriff. And when I walked into that building, oh my gosh, I was demolished by so many enemies. But with patience and perseverance, I eventually found the deputy, who agreed to help me find Benny if I'd freed him. But then, of course, the RPG gets in the way, and suddenly the town needs a new mayor. So I looked around, I headed to the NCR prison, and accidentally killed the mayor with a grenade launcher shot, so had to redo my save and go back to him, and eventually brought him to Primm. And, you know, he may not have been the best man for the job, but a mayor he is. On my way to Novac, I passed through Nipton, which was a really run-down and war-torn city. A young man approached me claiming that he'd won the lottery, though not in the good kind. Well, I guess technically it was. His winning ticket had been the freedom of Caesar's Legion.
Smell that air! Couldn't you just drink it like booze?
Though his friends had suffered much worse fates. While exploring this little town, I came across Boxcars, an NPC who had been very badly crippled, and he tasked me with taking out the Legion, though he was very rude about it, and seemed to care little about me personally. But regardless, I decided to take on Caesar's Legion, eliminate the enemy camp, and rescue his friends. And this is one thing that I've noticed about Fallout New Vegas. It is genuinely dangerous. Mutated creatures, ghouls, human foes alike, they all pose a real threat and often require careful tactics or grenade spams if you got them. Some of Caesar's Legion's soldiers took like 8 grenade launcher shots to bring them down, which felt insane, but I reminded myself that I might simply just be underleveled for the area, and open world design often means you end up wandering into challenges before you're fully prepared for it. After returning to Boxcars, I decided to look around the house that he was in and came across a sarsaparilla cap. And suddenly this NPC came up behind me and told me about how sarsaparilla caps are really dangerous to have on you because someone will hunt you down to try and get them off of you because there is apparently this treasure somewhere in the Mojave Wasteland only sarsaparilla caps can get you to unlock. I'm not really too sure. But after leaving Nipton, I came across this NPC and he was talking about how this person that he was walking with decided to turn on him because he had a necklace full of these sarsaparilla caps. And so I immediately decided to end the dialogue, sneak behind him and steal his necklace because that's the kind of playthrough I was going for. But finally arriving at Novac, I encountered a mission that really intrigued me. I had to find the killer or the person who stole Boone's wife. This murder mystery required interrogating NPCs across the town, and ultimately, I suspected Manny, who had been visibly angry with Boone for personal reasons. Acting on this, I set up the confrontation in front of the giant T-Rex in Novac, put on the beret that Boone had provided me as a signal, and Manny was killed, but Boone was really upset with me for acting without evidence. And so I lost respect and reputation as a result, a harsh lesson about the consequences in this world.
God damn it, this wasn't supposed to be a guess. He might not have done a goddamn thing. Get out.
While still in Novac, I investigated reports of a chupacabra. Locals mentioned it attacks at midnight, and I waited on their farm and, as promised, I saw a stealthy, half-invisible NPC approaching the Brahmin. I opened fire and successfully killed it, earning a substantial reward of Brahmin meat, which boosted my strength and carry weight, so it was a bonus. But genuinely, seeing this kind of clever quest design reinforced how rewarding it is to pay attention to NPC dialogues rather than just passing it off as a random piece of text. And this is one thing with RPGs where people just generally try and just skip over dialogue, they skim read and don't really pay attention, but Fallout New Vegas proves that sometimes, depending on the developer, if you do pay attention, you really will reap the rewards. After leaving Novac, I decided to explore a little bit more because I hadn't really discovered much of the wasteland at this point, and unfortunately I'm the type of player who likes to grab like every single location I can so I can just fast travel to that point later on rather than having to trek there now. And while exploring, I came across this facility called Repconn and discovered an NPC and started a mission called Come Fly With Me. In this mission, I met an NPC called Jason Bright, a glowing ghoul and a cult leader of all things. Unlike previous encounters, this non-human character did not attempt to kill me in any way, which was really refreshing amidst the constant threats. He tasked me with helping him and his followers reach the great beyond by collecting parts for a rocket. And one frustrating aspect about this game is that it made me collect each of these items one at a time, requiring multiple trips back and forth, and I know that this is like a minor annoyance in an otherwise engaging quest, but it's just something that I wanted to note. But finally, after I launched the rockets, watching the doors to the space station opened, accompanied by a triumphant classical World War II style score, it was immediately satisfying, and I had a massive smile on my face seeing this. Like, the combination of visuals, music, and narrative payoff made this one of the most memorable moments of my journey so far, and it was a good sign for what I had coming in the future. Roughly by this point, I was around level 8 or 9. I was creeping maybe towards 10, and exploring the Mojave Desert to its fullest. My reputation with Kaisar's Legion was absolutely atrocious because I kept getting repeatedly hunted by them, and it was absolutely relentless, but I was killing every single one of them. And by now, I decided to continue the main quest. I decided not to do too many more side missions and continue with the story, and after receiving a quest from Johnson, I tracked down Jessup, who was part of the Great Khans and part of the group that killed me at the beginning of the game. After speaking with an NCR soldier outside, I headed into the building. Jessup had hostages with him, and I decided to take the moral high ground, talking him out of killing everyone. Unfortunately though, the officer outside had received orders to eliminate him regardless, and to be honest, I didn't have the stats to save him, so I just had to leave it to fate. Before leaving though, Jessup ultimately did what he thought was best. During the encounter, I did learn new details about Benny, the platinum chip, and his whereabouts, so it was my time to head to the strip and continue my story. On my travels, I encountered a cannibal in a cave, a surprisingly gentle man. He wasn't any real threat, he was set up as this big cannibal, but he merely bit an enemy soldier's heart in self-defense and to show off that he was strong. He had chosen a life of solitude over conflict, living hidden away from the world. Just outside of his cave, I stumbled upon Vault 34. I tried multiple times to fight my way through that labyrinth of corridors, but at this level, I was severely underpowered. And with a sigh, I just noted that I would have to come back when I was stronger. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. Later, I ran into Victor, the travelling robot I had first met in Goodsprings, who offered to buy me a drink as we travelled together to the strip, and do you know what? I just couldn't refuse. So, on my way to the strip, I had to pass through Freeside along the way. I met several NPCs, including Ralph and Mick, and of course I had to do a few little side quests along the way, like stopping a group attempting to sell slaves, and the moral satisfaction was instantaneous, even though the world barely noticed it. Just before the strip, however, a pimp approached me asking help for new clients. I ignored him for the moment, focusing instead on gaining entry to the strip. And really, the side quests in New Vegas do not hold back whatsoever. They are quite involved. As I headed towards the front gates of the strip, I was required to pay 2,000 caps to enter or have a high enough science skill, because otherwise I wasn't considered worthy to head into the strip, which was unfortunate. And after considering my options, I decided to master Caravan. I spent a decent chunk of I'm not even joking, I spent a decent chunk of time watching YouTube tutorials, learning the strategies, and actually figuring out how to play the game in the first place. I thoroughly defeated the vendor in Primm, the vendor in Novac, and even Ringo from Goodsprings, and with those winnings, I finally had enough to enter the strip. And setting foot into it for the very first time was a revelation. It was absolutely beautiful and a stark contrast to everything else I had seen in New Vegas at this point, which was just a massive mix of dark greens, browns, and yellows. It wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be or how it's set up to be, because everyone talks about how amazing it is, but nonetheless, I still think it's a very beautiful place, especially when you consider how run down Freeside is. It was rather refreshing because not everyone there was trying to kill me. Inside the strip, Victor led me to the Lucky 38, where I finally met the elusive Mr. House that everyone keeps going on about, and I won't lie, he was infuriating, arrogant, and manipulative, but there was an undeniable charm to him.
You've been playing a high-stakes game ever since Victor dug you out of the ground.
Which is very bad, and in retrospect, I understood why he is considered to be one of the best characters in the Fallout universe, but he is also rather hands-off. And it was at this point where I kind of felt like I'd never really had much of an objective, like there wasn't a definitive goal that I was looking for. Because, you know, Mr. House has tasked me with retrieving his platinum chip from Benny, who is literally in the other casino, like across from the strip. Like, he's over there. The man who shot me at the beginning of the game is like 10 steps away from me. I had the option of either taking him out or trying to work out a deal or something like that. And this is really where I felt like the main story set into motion. At this point, I just felt like I was going from location to location, but now the events of the game were really starting to flourish. So I walked to the tops, Benny's casino, and I took the advice of speaking to Benny privately. He handed me a key to his private room after realizing that it wasn't his fault, it was, you know, he was so sorry. But this allowed me to steal all his belongings while I waited for him. So I went into his bedroom, stole everything I could, went absolutely everywhere, went into his vault, took everything he had. However, after a little bit of time, I was thinking, like, where has Benny gone? Like, where is he? He said he'd meet me up here. But in typical Benny fashion, he's double-crossed me again, fleeing to another location, but this eventually led me to Yes Man. And Yes Man was Benny's reprogrammed robot. True to his name, he provides unfiltered information, guiding me on my next steps. Yes Man even encouraged me to engage with all the other factions, like the White Glove Society, the Brotherhood of Steel, Caesar's Legion, the Emirates, the Great Khans, and the Boomers. And I was set to take this journey immediately, but on my way out of the building, a member of Caesar's Legion just decided to absolve me of all of my past transgressions in exchange for a meeting with Caesar himself, which I will say, I did not take up, because I can already tell this dude he's awful. But so yes, I went on exploring the alliances and opportunities in the Strip and in the wider land of New Vegas. Outside of the strip, I decided to meet with the Brotherhood of Steel, which proved to be a very, very, very interesting experience. Upon reaching their base, I was asked to strip and hand over all of my gear just to meet their elder. And, you know, these people have been down in this base for years and years, so who knows what they get up to. But it was humorous and, if anything, a little bit intimidating. So I met with their elder in my underwear, who tasked me with removing an NCR scout by any means necessary with a collar around my neck that had a bomb in it. Initially, I assumed that this meant kill him, but upon arrival, I chose to negotiate. I'd convinced the scouts to leave peacefully and avoiding any unnecessary bloodshed. But upon returning to the Elder, I assumed that I was going to get an absolute mouthful. I thought he was going to hate what I'd just done. But I found out that the collar I was wearing had a microphone, and my non-lethal approach earned his trust. And to be honest, I was pretty happy with that because I really wanted to pursue the Brotherhood of Steel ending for this game. And just for reference, at this point in the game, I'm roughly level 10 or 11, and the difficulty felt like it spiked dramatically. There was mutated centaurs, elite super mutants, and for the first and only time in my entire playthrough, a Deathclaw made their presence felt, and that Deathclaw was every bit as terrifying as I imagined, rather than the pushovers that you see in Fallout 4. And it was also a point where I felt like New Vegas truly opened up. After taking this mission from Yes Man and going to explore the major factions, side quests felt like they became way more abundant, and the world felt more alive, and the range of choices and consequences expanded dramatically. Granted, this is probably because I was exploring more areas of the world that were more populated, and where more side quests would take place. While at the Brotherhood of Steel, I decided to complete their entire questline, and I replaced the current Elder with Harden. Initially, I struggled with the moral implications of this decision, pondering the consequences, but I ultimately went with this new Elder. And you know what? I was offered a full membership, which is exactly what I wanted, but I decided against joining them immediately, wanting to, keep my options open for any other factions. Next, I headed to the Nellis Air Force Base and immediately got bombarded with tons and tons and tons of different rockets. But after sneaking my way through, hiding under roofs of houses that were broken already, I met Pearl, the leader of the Boomers, and also met other characters like Loyal and Jack. And I completed numerous quests while there, like helping Jack court a Crimson Caravan girl, which was absolutely beautiful and I was so happy to do that, repairing solar panels, and even lifting a B-29 bomber for Loyal. They all contributed to building Nellis's community support, and also building my reputation with them. These tasks were really less about story, and more about preparing this community for future conflicts, partially the Battle of Hoover Dam. Oh damn, I just said that. After meeting with the Brotherhood of Steel, I decided to head back to the Strip to let Yes Man know that I'd met with them and that he should leave them alone. But I came across the building of the Kings. It's something that I initially just passed up as absolutely nothing. And if anything, the place just kind of looked like set dressing for the Strip. But I went in, got charged 50 caps to meet with the King, got paid back, and then figured out that one of the guards outside the Strip was actually hustling people for more money. That whole thing. It earned the reputation of the King himself, which was unfortunate because I had to take out a group of NCR soldiers, which worsened my standing with the NCR considerably. But while I was shunned from the NCR, I could still access the NCR facilities and repair my weapons where needed, even though my reputation had taken a hit, which was unfortunate. But because of all my hard work for the Kings, I was offered a membership. But I did hesitate a little tiny bit, because this faction is just a group of people who really want to just cosplay as Elvis Presley. Every single person is dressed the exact same way. They all kind of talk like this, like Elvis Presley. And, it was a bit weird, especially considering there's actually no Elvis music in this entire game. And I actually researched this and found out that I don't think that they wanted to pay the rights for Elvis music, which is why it isn't included. And it was at this point where some complications arose with the Brotherhood of Steel. Where I'd chosen the new Elder, it locked me out of certain things that I otherwise would have been able to pursue with Elder McNamara, such as the Brotherhood of Steel ending. And I had to carefully weigh my next steps. Ultimately, I decided to pursue the yes man ending. And it was at this point where I had to choose whether to kill or disable Mr. House and whether to upgrade the Securitrons. And so I went to that fort and I tried to go through and blow up some generators, but unfortunately I was just way too underleveled to do this. The radiation was just going through the roof, and there was about 4 or 5 massive tanking Securitrons just blasting at me with miniguns, and it was far more difficult than anything else I had encountered thus far. And so again, I decided that it was probably time for me to go out and do some more side quests to build up my character and maybe get some new weapons, because at this point I felt like I was lacking quite a lot. But just as a side note, by this point I had so many quests with multiple factions that I started to feel a little bit lost. I had tons of objectives that were scattered across the Mojave, but lacked the necessary skills like science, lockpicking, speech checks, and everything like that. It just became a bit overwhelming, and the quest descriptions often didn't provide any clear direction. Essentially, I was just kind of like spinning my wheels, trying to make progress without knowing the best path forward. On my way into the Mojave, I was still getting the realization that I was not high enough level for certain things, or that yet I was meant to make any companion relationships whatsoever. Typically, when I play RPGs, especially the Bethesda ones, I tend to do it solo, but I felt like maybe this was the time to actually have some companions, because essentially they would make the game a bit easier, and I'd be able to actually get a bit more of a grasp on the situation in New Vegas. So that's exactly what I did. I decided to explore and try and recruit some NPCs. My first companion encounter was with Veronica, a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, but in secret, and I thought this was perfect, as I'd initially planned to align with them for the ending, so maybe it was kind of like a little bit of a substitution. I might not get the ending, but at least I'll kind of still be aligned with them. And to be honest, Veronica turned out to be a powerhouse, and one of the strongest companions that I had ever seen, and after I did a few side quests with her to get to know her, unfortunately, for some reason, I couldn't do her main quest for some reason. It just wouldn't let me do it whatsoever. I decided to explore like the top left side of the map because it was completely empty for me. It was a place that I hadn't necessarily avoided, but just I hadn't really had much of a reason to go up there. So I thought, well, maybe there'll be some good stuff up there. And to be honest, there was a real treasure waiting for me. Suddenly I got told by this NCR soldier that if I didn't increase my reputation with the NCR, that they were going to come and kill me. So what did I do? I headed straight back to the NCR outpost and tried to find any quest that I could do whatsoever. And that's what I did. I was tasked with heading back to Nipton, a place that I hadn't been to in a very, very long time, and figure out what actually was happening there. I was told to head into the building and look around and see what was happening, who was there, and I tried to speak to some Caesar's Legion soldiers, and no dialogue was happening whatsoever. I was frantically looking around this building and, again, looting everything I could, but ultimately nothing was happening whatsoever. Every time I'd walk out of the building, it would say the objective was in the building, and then every time I was in the building, it would say it was outside the building. And I kept going back to the NCR soldier trying to figure out what was actually going on. Until eventually, after my third return trip back to Nipton, I went in to go speak to Boxcars once more, or even just to see if he was still there. And all I needed to do was speak to him, and then the quest was completed. And this is one of my struggles with Fallout New Vegas, is that if you go to a location early, quote unquote, you can end up bricking entire quest lines or interactions, and it just locks you out of certain parts of the game, which is really frustrating because I wanted to be able to, pursue certain quest lines, but couldn't because I'd already been to a location before. After rebuilding a bit of my reputation with the NCR, I decided to head back to the northwest of the map. And that was where I came across Jacobstown, a town full of super mutants, and I encountered another called Lily. From our first interaction, Lily struck me as absolutely hilarious. The juxtaposition of her being a super mutant grandmother with a sharp, witty personality was so funny. It was so good. It was like, Lily's the best.
Show me the bighorners. They're sweet, gentle creatures, but sometimes they get ornery, just like my grandkids.
After entering Jacobstown and making a deal with the NCR to leave this town alone, I spoke with Dr. Henry, and we tried to figure out why the Nightkin were going insane. So, what did I have to do? Take Lily with me, get rid of Veronica,
Why does everyone always say that?
and head to a Night Stalker camp. And in doing so, I found a Stealth Boy too, and respecting Lily's independence and her wanting to test it on herself, I let her do so. I could have had the choice to say no, she's not doing that, but she is an independent woman and she don't need no man. But suddenly this group of Nightkin come bursting through the door, saying that I should hand over this Stealth Boy too, otherwise there's going to be trouble. Respecting what I was told when I entered Jacobstown, that no bullets should ever be fired, I decided, you know what, I'm going to try the peaceful approach. But unfortunately, I didn't have a high enough speech skill, so I just let them keep the Stealth Boy too, and that was it. Adhering to Marcus's plea when I first entered Jacobstown that violence is not the answer. And so with Lily's quest out of the way, I decided to travel to the Black Mountain. I met Neil and freed Raoul, who I didn't realise until like a few days after the game finished that it was actually Danny Trejo the whole time. I had no idea. But I wanted to see what Raoul had in mind, so I unfortunately had to let Lily go back to the Lucky 38 while I did Raoul's questline, and unfortunately, like a previous interaction, this questline was bugged. Because I'd previously spoken with Ranger Andy at Nipton, it prevented me from completing Raoul's personal quest. It's a frustrating second instance of a game's bugs limiting content. To make note of it, Fallout New Vegas was proving to be as buggy as expected, even with some quality of life mods installed. And so unfortunately, after trying to attempt Raoul's questline, I decided to get rid of him. I headed back to the Lucky 38 to grab Lily back, as that was where I sent her initially. Upon leaving the Lucky 38, I was tasked with helping out the followers of the Apocalypse, with bugging the Lucky 38 to try and get any insight on Mr. House. And I thought, you know what? I might as well, because I'm gonna kill him off or disable him anyway, so I might as well bug the place. So I did that and got some great health items which I desperately needed at this point. And then while exploring Freeside, I came across the McNamara base and decided to take up the bounty quests for some extra caps and experience, because at this point it felt like I wasn't leveling up as quickly as I should. And after completing the 3 bounties, I decided, you know what? I'm going to have a game of Caravan. I haven't played a game of Caravan in a long time. And what did I do? I immediately lost. But I did thoroughly enjoy the experience of playing this. This was actually a point when I was playing where I realised that I hadn't actually played Caravan in such a long time. It feels like it's such a fundamental part of the game early on, and then it just disappears forever. But I will say, by this point in the playthrough, I was having a real nice break from the story and just being able to do my own thing and explore where I wanted to explore. At my current level, I felt like it was time to return to Vault 34. I thought this was a Fallout game and I hadn't really explored any of the vaults, so why not? But having gained a few more levels and some stronger weapons and Lily as a companion, Vault 34 was still incredibly challenging. The glowing ghouls, the regular ghouls, they were massive in numbers and made survival really tense. There was constant radiation being forced down my throat, which meant that I had to take frequent trips to Goodsprings for treatment and then head back to Vault 34. After about an hour of careful exploration and trying to figure out how to unlock the armory, I did so, and the weapons and ammo I found, including a sniper rifle and missiles, were invaluable and really just some new weapons that I needed because I was a bit bored of using the same Caravan shotgun. The next quest that I tackled was unfortunately my last quest for the Brotherhood of Steel. This was a quest that initially I thought was bugged and was for the other Elder, but it turns out that it wasn't. I had to take out the Van Graff faction in the strip. I wiped them out completely and collected some really impressive late game weapons, including a recharger pistol which depleted in its condition so rapidly, but it was so worth it. And also completing this quest meant that I finally unlocked my first set of power armor, which was a lot smaller and sleeker than the bulkier versions seen in Fallout 4 and 76, but it felt really empowering to be able to be fully equipped for the game's final stages, and also because the armor that I was using at this point was, to be honest, well, rather rubbish. Feeling ready for the endgame, I headed back to the fort and entered Mr. House's bunker with Lily. I destroyed all the robots, disabled the generators, and that was that quest finished. But after completing this objective, I barely made it out alive. There was 4 massive tank-like robots and Securitrons that were just ready to absolutely destroy me. And the radiation that I was accumulating at this point in time was absolutely ridiculous. As I was heading out, I'm pretty sure that I had maybe 1 or 2 seconds before I would have been killed off for the radiation. It was an exhilarating experience, and one where I literally got out by the skin of my teeth, if I have any skin left, because it probably got all irradiated off. And just when you think you're going to pop to the merchants and continue your main quest, I visited the Brotherhood of Steel merchant to stock up on Radaway, which unfortunately I had depleted all of it while exploring Mr. House's bunker. But while heading to the merchants, I realised that I hadn't really explored much of the Brotherhood of Steel's base. I just kind of went to the Elder, left, went to the Elder, and left. But I discovered the firing range and found out that a gun went missing. After interrogating members of the Brotherhood of Steel, I found out that a kid had actually stolen it, gone out of the base, and dropped it. Retrieving it required battling countless rad scorpions. And these rad scorpions ranged from tiny little babies to absolutely humongous rad scorpions. And with Lily getting knocked unconscious all the time, it was absolutely chaos. Eventually though, I was able to return the gun, which earned me a reward from the vendor, a tri-beam laser rifle, which did give me a sense of satisfaction. And of course, with the side questing and forgetting to do the main quests, I decided to keep exploring and came across Vault 19, which again is not setting up the main storyline at all, but setting up more world building come the end of the game. After discovering Vault 19, it was at this point where I decided, you know what, I want to explore all of the vaults in the Mojave Wasteland. After all, it is a Fallout game and vaults are kind of a big deal. And considering I'd not really had much experience so far in New Vegas with vaults, I decided to continue on. I tried to help them by completing their quest line, fighting Night Stalkers and other enemies along the way, but when it came to blowing up the sulfur in the caves, my explosive skill was way too low. I think it was only at like level 8. And after I searched through my aid tab to see if I had any magazines that I could use to buff my stats, unfortunately I couldn't. My level was only level 8 and I don't think any magazines stack. So unfortunately I just couldn't complete the quest. And this actually reminded me of a similar situation at Helios 1 where I needed 75 science to repair a radar dish. And these moments really reinforced a key aspect of Fallout New Vegas that otherwise I would have overlooked, and it's that you can't finish every single quest. That's intentional. Your stat choices and playstyle naturally lock you out of some options, whether that's speech, barter, intimidation, karma checks, and so much more. And I guess it makes it more interesting for a repeat playthrough because you're going to need to allocate your stats in different places to do different things. I then travelled to Vault 3, which was full of fiends, and after meeting with their leader, who was only offering me 20 caps per chem, which is absolutely extortionate, unbelievable. I couldn't believe I accidentally sold all my stuff. I then decided to lockpick every door I could and steal everything they had as a bit of compensation. And then I headed to Vault 22, which is essentially just full of mutated plant creatures and creatures that look like they're straight out of Mario. And the final vault that I explored was Vault 11, which turned out to have a seriously dark story about forced sacrifice to appease a deity, leading to every single person eventually being killed. But after all of the vaults, I focused on Yes Man and planning to disable or kill Mr. House. I entered the Lucky 38 and was immediately fired upon by Securitrons, but I took him down. After clearing out the penthouse, I made my way down to Mr. House's secret bunker. Seeing Mr. House outside of his life support pod, he looked frail, scraggly, and to be honest, like a bag of bones, and it was a real stark contrast to the larger-than-life persona that he puts on a screen. Ultimately though, I did decide to kill him, and I felt that this was the right choice. Returning to Yes Man, turns out that he's uploaded himself to the mainframe, essentially becoming the AI of Mr. House's network. And I genuinely thought that at this point in the game he was going to turn on us, but he didn't. Instead, it was now his turn to give me more quests, and I had to head to a power station to activate his systems, during which I had to kill some more NCR soldiers, damaging my reputation with them once again. And because of this, Yes Man then upgraded the Securitrons, giving them a fresh new look with little army men faces instead of cowboys. And then next came Hoover Dam, the final mission of the game. The Legion's forces were everywhere, planes dropped bombs, and the scale of battle was immense. After disabling generators and fighting through waves of Legion soldiers, I was confronted with the Legion leader, Kaiser's right-hand man, you know, the one with the big sword and the massive iconic masks that I totally looted after I killed him. And initially, he only allowed me to fight him with multiple people with him. Like, there was maybe 8 or 9 soldiers with him, all attacking me. It was very overwhelming. And the annoying thing is that I was like 1 skill point away from being able to use speech to make it a one-on-one duel. And I just was so frustrated. But after my numerous repeat encounters of dying, being revived, dying, coming back, I found out that in my aid tab, I had a +10 speech magazine, and I used it. I convinced him to fight me alone, which then turned out to not be alone because I had Lily by my side, so it was a 2v1. Even then though, it was still grueling. I relied heavily on stims, jets, mentats, all to survive. But ultimately, I defeated him and fully looted his armor and his sword. It was just too cool to pass up. On my way out, after killing this soldier, I was caught in an explosion and witnessed the final cutscene. The NCR soldiers just wanted to, you know, be friends, but unfortunately, the dialogue options I have, I tried to make them leave. I tried to make sure that they survived and they got out of there okay. But the dialogue checks just were fighting against me. I couldn't do it. And so the NCR got really angry, and ultimately the Securitrons decided to kill them all. And that is the conclusion of Fallout New Vegas. Overall, the ending felt really, really abrupt compared to games like Fallout 4. There was minimal build-up whatsoever. You probably heard me say all of that and thought, like, there must be more. Essentially, there is 2 final missions, dealing with Mr. House and then the Battle of Hoover Dam. That said, the cutscenes showing the aftermath and the futures of NPCs was satisfying, and it did add meaningful closure that otherwise I feel like could have been expanded in maybe 1 or 2 more missions. Reflecting on my experience, Fallout New Vegas excels in character interactions. Unlike Fallout 4 or Skyrim, I genuinely wanted to hear more of what NPCs had to say. The writing was really strong. Every single character had motivation beyond merely just advancing quest lines. They aren't just placeholders, they felt like real people with lives, personalities, and actual agendas. Factions, on the other hand, felt like a bit of a mixed bag compared to Fallout 4's Brotherhood, Institute, Minutemen, and Railroad. The NCR and Kaiser's Legion quests were limited. I only received 1 or 2 meaningful missions before locking myself into faction outcomes. And whilst the world building cues are clear, the Legion's brutality, the NCR's rigid bureaucracy, I never fully grasped each faction's core values because I didn't really get to experience that much time with them and really get to know the characters, and that's something that I really did kind of dislike about Fallout New Vegas. In addition, combat tended to favour melee weapons for 2 reasons. 1, they're very overpowered, and range combat just felt inconsistent. My ADS was unreliable, making close quarter fights more dependable, and of course, you know, VATS helped, but stamina and ammo constraints forced me to rely on melee for most of my playthrough, which I'm not gonna, you know, sit around and say that I really hate that. I really actually enjoyed playing a melee character, but it was just like a limiting factor, and I guess that's also a thing with the age of the game. It's not a modern shooter. It is relatively old, and so, you know, I'm not trying to make excuses for it, but you have to realize that it is kind of a thing of its time. Another thing that I wanted to touch on was resource management. More importantly, the resource scarcity that added a layer of challenge. Stim packs, radaways, and ammo were all limited, requiring me to carefully scavenge and manage my inventory carefully. Running out of ammunition also often meant that I had to fight smarter or, you know, rely on my melee weapons, which encouraged a more strategic approach to encounters. Now, there are mechanics in Fallout New Vegas to be able to craft ammo and, you know, be able to buy new stim packs and radaways from merchants if you wait a certain amount of time, but I tried not to do that too often. I tried to primarily stick to the stuff that I looted because I didn't want to turn the game into something that I was min-maxing just to make sure I got the best of both worlds. And to be honest, I'm really grateful for it, because it also adds another contextual layer to the entire game, because, you know, this is a finite world. There aren't massive factories pumping out ammunition every single day. There is a limited amount of everything, and essentially it just keeps in tone with the game. One thing you may have noticed from my gameplay is that I am using mods. As for the mods I'm using, I am essentially just using quality of life improvements. A 4GB patch to stabilize the game. That being said, I maybe still experienced like 7 or 8 crashes. Luckily, their autosave is pretty reliable. It usually just crashed when I'd left a building, so I was still pretty happy with that, especially considering the reputation that Fallout New Vegas has, so if I didn't have these mods installed, I have no idea what my experience would have been like. I also added a sprinting mod, and some Fallout 4 style item management. Oh, and not to mention a post-mainline quest continuation mod. None of these mods drastically altered the gameplay. They just modernized it ever so slightly. It was just enough to improve comfort without breaking the immersion. If anything, the way that I'm playing it now is probably how it would be if they remastered the game. But it's just something I wanted to mention, as obviously this isn't a completely vanilla experience. Ultimately, Fallout New Vegas offered a deeply engaging experience. I really did love my time with it, and I can say with a passion that this game is better than Fallout 4. I did never really understand why people hated on Fallout 4 that much, and a lot of it went down to quest lines and everything like that, and I can really see that New Vegas shines in a way that Fallout 4 just really stripped back. Especially when it comes to choices like your stats and the decisions that you make with different characters. These two never felt that big in Fallout 4, whereas New Vegas, they felt like a core fundamental pillar of the game and not just a tick in a box. And despite a few rough edges and bugs and the really abrupt ending, which I'm still fairly baffled by, it remains one of the most thoughtful and character-driven RPGs that I have ever played. Considering how quickly Obsidian got this game out, it is incredible what they were able to achieve. Now, I know that the company only got like an 84 on their review, and if they got 85, then they would have got bonuses for the entire team, but unfortunately they didn't. I can kind of see why, because the game is really great, but it just needed, unfortunately, it just needed that little bit of extra time, that little bit of extra polish to make sure that it would have been the best version that it can be, because if mods can't even save the game, then, you know, it makes you wonder how long it would have taken them to fix it. I'm really happy, though, that I played Fallout New Vegas. It didn't take me that long. It took me about 26 hours or so, which, granted, isn't actually that long at all. This game is relatively short, and it's going to make me really happy when I watch Season 2 of the Fallout TV show, and being able to point out little things and realize what this place is. Oh, I recognize that, and you know, all of that jazz. It's going to be really nice to be able to kind of be in on it, if you will. Because essentially that's the reason why I played New Vegas in the first place. But then comes the big question. Would I recommend Fallout New Vegas? Hell yeah, it's brilliant. Go play.